All right, good morning, fans and listeners of the show. We're back on with part two of a two-part podcast with Jeff Szabo, the CEO of the Suffolk County Water Authority. We had a real lightning discussion with him in part one, and we're going to continue that now with part two. But before we get started, again, if you guys are interested in getting a hold of PW Grocer, best way to get a hold of us is through our website, which is www.pwgrocer.com/podcast. And again, we've got the staff there managing that website. If you guys have questions, thoughts, insights you want to share with us, or topics, or you're interested in being a future guest, please feel free to reach out. We will get back to you. But picking up where we just left off with Jeff on our last episode, we were talking about the water main extension from Flanders through the town of Riverhead to Southold to provide them with a little bit more water, especially during these peak seasons like the summer when irrigation is a real hot topic. Jeff, you started to mention, it might be a little bit of a challenge to get a pipe or a couple of pipes perhaps from Flanders, which is in Southampton, through the town of Riverhead up onto the North Fork to Southold. Could you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, so as we were talking about it in the last episode, it's an 8.5-mile stretch that we need to bring water from Flanders up to the town line of Riverhead and Southold. Working in the street, as a utility, doing that type of construction work, that's something that, utilities do every single day, and I think we have a very good track record of working with the community and engaging those that will be impacted. We're not opening up 8.5 miles of roadway at once. This is something.
Is it just it town, county, state roads, or a combination? Or
very good question. So what we've done, we've proposed a route that'll take us across County Road 104, 105, over by Indian Island Golf Course, and then up to Sound Avenue on the north, and then head east from there.
Okay.
We're in the environmental review process right now. We extended the public comment period until this Friday, July 11th. We've received literally hundreds of comments from residents and from professionals and elected officials and others who have an interest and want us during the environmental review process to answer certain questions, which we will do. Some of them have proposed alternative routes, which we will certainly look at. Most of the roads are county and town. So we would, obviously work to extend water main over the bridge near Indian Island County Park, and then along the roadway up on Sound Avenue. There's existing water main there currently. The town of Riverhead has water main there. They don't. So it's not something that's really very difficult to do. Again, a utility, we have water authority and contractors, they do this every day. We'd open up small sections of road, a couple of 100 feet a day, then, backfill it. You know how it goes.
Yes.
Make sure it's safe. We'd come back and do final restoration once it settles a little bit, but that's not really the difficult part. It sounds, so I think, more alarming to the public than it actually is, only because it's a large stretch. But again, this is something that people can chime in on. The town of Riverhead certainly has an opinion. We've met with them on several occasions. The town of Southold has some thoughts on it. So we're meeting with all of the interested parties to make sure that we answer all of their questions as thoroughly as we possibly can.
I think one thing that caught my attention, and maybe it's fairly important to note, is what I've seen in the papers and heard on the news. No new services would be extended from that main in the town of Riverhead. It's just a pipe going right through. Is that correct?
So the connection actually just crosses into Southold. So we have an existing distribution system in Southold. We don't serve all of the folks, but we serve a good percentage, 12,500 accounts, I believe, off the top of my head. This would just extend the water to that connection. So there is concern and there is fear, I think, from some of the residents that by bringing water into Southold, it's going to change the culture. It's going to change the composition of Southold as a town. We don't do that. We're the drinking water supplier. Zoning and planning and changes to the appearance of a town and who's allowed to, what businesses are allowed to operate in the town, that's all controlled by local zoning in the town of Southold. So that's up to the supervisor and the town board to decide. What we're doing is just bringing more water into the township to relieve the existing wells that are there. Now, there are people, there are connections that are made every day. People come to us and they ask to be connected, and there's a process that people go through. Typically, it's a neighborhood or a few houses that are on private wells. Mm-hmm. Some of them are, impacted by PFAS and other compounds. In fact, some of the highest levels of PFAS detected in the county are in Southold Township. But they come to us. Residents come and they say, can you give us an estimate? There are contracts. There's a process that we go through depending on water availability and all that. And we would continue to do that. But this is not, we're not planning to extend water main into Southold with bringing this 8.5-mile stretch of main to the town line. There is a second part in Orient, which is the furthest end of the township, that we included in our environmental review so that we wouldn't be accused of segmentation. So we were concerned. We debated this a long time. We didn't want folks saying, "Hey, you're not looking at the entire township. You're just looking at the western end. What about Orient? There's no water main. They have some of the highest levels of PFAS in the state. Why aren't you looking at that?" So we wanted to do the environmental review and be as complete as we possibly could be.
Man, that's interesting. You mentioned, this is basically we're importing water into an area, right? So not coming out of the ground over there, but it's going to go back in eventually as the water gets used. And, it's not 100% consumptive. A large portion does make its way back in. As part of your environmental review, I assume you guys are studying the effects of adding more water to the groundwater out there.
Yes, exactly. And that's one of the key points. How does that impact the aquifer in Southold?
Yep.
Literally hundreds and hundreds of different questions that have been posed by residents and elected officials that they're asking us and our consultants to look at, and we will do that. We will be as thorough as we possibly can be. I think, long term, I think when we have an opportunity to tell our story and to talk to the folks and the residents that live in the community, once we get past, okay, so you're bringing water to the town line, there's not going to be, new connections. It's going to benefit the existing aquifer and the Southold overall.
That's what I was hoping you were going to say, because that's where I was headed with this.
Check.
Yep.
People tend to have a new perspective, and so I have to do. I have to be as aggressive as I possibly can be myself and my staff in talking to the folks that matter, and certainly in this particular case, it's the residents of Southold.
Yeah. So you alluded it to, it's saying part one of this podcast series here. Saltwater intrusion out there on the North Fork is a big issue. Here at PW Grocer, myself included, we've done some extensive, modeling and saltwater interface modeling out there, and we see how fragile and, how those lenses and all the clays and everything else look. When we talk about adding, importing water, and as I mentioned, the stuff's going to end up going back into the ground as it gets used. That's going to be a real benefit to, helping reduce those, those intrusion effects, whether it's, horizontal translation or even vertical upconing. What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's something that we continuously monitor, primarily on the North Fork, because, again, low capacity wells, salt water is a threat. We can tell just by normal summer demand that we watch the chloride levels increase, right? Mm-hmm. And we know when we have to back off of our wells, because you would essentially destroy a well. If you break that, that well may be lost forever. So it's that delicate balance of pulling what's permitted, right, and what's allowed by the state DEC through a permit process, but we still actively manage the well fields to prevent that from happening.
And if it was a long-term problem, and I'm just speaking hypothetically, what would they do if they didn't have, this option to import water? I mean, it's pretty limited options.
Very good question, right? Those are some of the things that we try to think about. We understand the concern about development, but again, that's not our issue. That's the town's issue. We can supply the water, but we don't want to change the nature of Southold. We understand that and respect that. But if there is an issue like that, right, where there's an inability to supply water, not just for lawn irrigation, but for cooking and for cleaning and bathing and all that stuff, that would really be a concern, a health concern. So we're trying to avoid that. We have hydrogeologists on staff that have told me, this project, we should have initiated this project 30 years ago. That this would, we knew, and I think, nobody knows the aquifer better than the folks at the Water Authority, our engineering team and our operations team, working with consultants and really smart people. After all these years, we know the aquifer. We know that it's a limited supply, and that although we may over the years pick up a small well here and a small well there, the solution really is moving water from, again, where we have it to where we need it most, which is Southold. We should have initiated years ago. We didn't. We're doing it today, and we're looking forward to a successful completion.
Do you see a timeline to this process? I mean, when the water might start flowing? Any ideas?
So we've been saying, 2030. That gives us, it is a multi-million-dollar project.
Oh, yeah.
Extending main transmission main that far is, $25 million, $30 million. So we don't want we want to incorporate it into our existing capital budget, annual capital budget, and sort of pay for it, piece by piece by piece leading up to 2030. And we think by doing that under our existing budget, which is about $110 million a year capital budget, we'll be able to do that. So there won't be a direct impact on rates. There won't be any surcharge. It'll be part of what we do, sort of normal business over the next several years.
All right. You answered my next questions after, when, how much, and it's coming out of the capital budget. So hopefully the funding is there, and there's no additional.
We should point out, I did not see these questions beforehand.
I know.
I'm moving ahead.
These are coming off the top of my head because you just, you give me such good ideas. I want to know, and if it's all good stuff. And saltwater intrusion. One of the things we can do is possibly conservation, right? And we did touch on this a little bit about this in our previous part one of this 2-part episode. And I love what you said, the value of water. That's a term. I almost want to get a hat or a T-shirt made up like that, so people can really think about that. It is a critical resource to where we live, where we're from. We can't live without it. It is absolutely such an important thing. And too many of us don't give it enough thought or take it for granted at times. Enough of my preaching.
Well, it's true. And I say this all the time, and we all play a role, right? Everybody who lives Long Island or visits Long Island, we all play a role. Our system is different. You go, people in New York City or upstate New York, they get their drinking water from, a lake or something like that. New York City, they have the reservoirs upstate and they tunnel the water down into the city.
Yep.
Here, this water is under our feet. And although there's a lot of it, enough to last, several lifetimes, we think, that doesn't mean that we can't, be smart about its use and make sure that we all, play a part in making sure it's there for future generations. I want my kids to be able to have, an aquifer that is plentiful and certainly as pure as it possibly can be. So we can all do things today to impact the aquifer down the road.
Oh, absolutely. But from a conservation standpoint, you mentioned keeping our grass green. To me, in my mind, that's one of the biggest ways we can save water is cutting back on that, maybe not living with such a lush lawn, but in suburbia, that's a tall order. I mean, how do you really convince somebody, especially, last summer, towards the end of the summer and into the fall, we had a drought. I mean, my lawn, I stopped watering, it went brown, if a spark, my whole neighborhood would have went up, but there were people they still had green, lush lawns in this drought condition where you really,
So there's a fine balance, right? I think people who think they need to water their lawn every day, that's just factually not correct. You don't need to do that. Your lawn typically needs an inch and a half of rain a week.
Yep.
If you water every other, we encourage folks. We passed a resolution at with our board at the Water Authority to water on odd, even days. So if your house number was an odd day, you water on odd days and even numbers. So it would help two ways. One, it would prevent the daily watering, which is smart and good for your lawn and also helps, save you some money. But then it would also relieve that burden of those Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays where we see those real high peak demands.
Oh, yeah.
It would level it out a little bit where you have half the people watering on a Monday, half the people on a Tuesday. So those are all good things. We think, too, by offering financial incentives, of course, right, that makes perfect sense, and people like to save money.
Yeah.
And we've had over 4,000 people over the last couple of years participate in our rebate program. We provide up to $250 per account for smart watering devices, and they can. We credit the account. They supply us with the receipt. We send it to the folks in the Water Authority who review this type of information, and depending on what they buy, we will then credit their account for that amount. It's proven very successful. We've returned almost several $100,000 to customers with these conservation initiatives, and we've even expanded it. A couple of years ago, we expanded it to include pool covers and other things, rain barrels and things like that. So we're trying to be creative.
Jeff, I have not ever heard of that incentive. I have the rain gauge and all that stuff with my irrigation. Does that count?
Yeah.
Come on.
Do you have a receipt?
I do not.
So that, listen, that means that my staff and I need to do a better job of sharing that rebate.
Yeah, we got to get the word out, because I'd be interested for sure. I mean, that's fantastic.
I'll send you some information on that.
Thank you. All right. Maybe this may be a big or a small topic, but where are we regarding the Water Authority strategic plan for 2025?
I have good news to share. We completed the 2025 strategic plan early.
All right.
At some point a couple of years ago, we had completed 88 or 89% of our initiatives, and we were really proud of it. Finishing early, accomplishing an overwhelming majority of our objectives. Where we weren't able to be successful, we sort of identified why. Why didn't this particular project move along, or where were there holdups that prevented us from completing it? So we initiated a second strategic plan 2030, which is underway right now, where we've identified 10 different categories similar to the first strategic plan. Water quality, right? It's customer growth, it's financial. The basic categories stay the same. We tried to be a little bit more creative in sort of the objectives and sort of where we plan to be, a little bit more forward thinking, a little bit, let's envision us in 2030. What does that world look like from a supplier's perspective and a corporate entity? This July, several of the committee chairs of those different 10 categories will be briefing my board on the progress that we've made. We do it twice a year. It's a good way to keep us accountable. And it's a good way to make sure that, staff is motivated and they're sort of committed to completing those objectives, and our board and our customers are also know that, hey, we're not standing pat. We continue to be aggressive and to look to the future and to be at the forefront of the industry. We're really proud of our track record doing that.
That's fantastic. It's great to hear you hit those objectives and hit them early.
Thank you.
Great job. All right, one last question, and this is something that I am interested. I used to live in Oakdale. We actually even bid on this project when it came out. It's some new facilities you guys are developing over in Oakdale, where your headquarters is, and it's the administrative hubbub, and there's some operations facilities there as well. What's going on?
Great.
How do we stand?
Yeah, thank you. It's really an exciting project. We don't really typically do this. I've been CEO for the last 15 years. I think the one building that we constructed was a new transportation garage in Oakdale to replace something that was built in 1936, believe it or not. So we constructed that building, but looking at our campus layout, looking at our assets, so we have our main hub, which is our administration building, and we have our construction maintenance sort of offices there, which is both blue collar and white collar. And then there are several other buildings along that stretch there, including across the street. We had our engineering building. So we have several different buildings on that site. Over the years, it was sort of a hodgepodge of collection of different things. Somebody was selling something, we needed space, we'd buy it. We really didn't develop sort of a plan, like a long-term plan of what we need and sort of why we need it and where we want people to be. Looking at our construction maintenance building, it's got enormous deficiencies, right? It's too small. It's got, issues related to its HVAC and its roof and other things. And we would have had to invest many millions of dollars to sort of bring that building up to speed. So we decided not to do that, but to look to the future and to create sort of a work environment that we can really be proud of. We have begun work. We expect to construct a almost 40,000 square foot building in the Oakdale campus, just behind our administrative building, which you can see from Sunrise Highway as you head as you're crossing over there at the Oakdale merge, the famous merge. But it's an exciting project. We'll house our construction maintenance crews. It's one of our largest departments. Again, blue collar, white collar. We're also going to have some room for general services staff and our engineering staff. So having all of those folks together, you can, engineering, right, construction, general services, facilities, it just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Collaboration, creativity, and that's a several-year project. We expect to to wrap up completion of the project by summer of 2027, late summer. It's something that I think the employees deserve, investing in ourselves a little bit. And it's not a Taj Mahal, right? We're making sure that we keep costs as low as possible, and we do everything we can to make it a good place to work, but also not getting out of hand with costs.
Well, I know that I said that was my last question, but while we're on the topic, one of the aspects that we were really interested in PWGC when you guys put that job out, for architect and engineering services, was geothermal. Is it still going geothermal over there?
Yeah, so we probably not.
Oh,
right. So
you just broke my heart.
Sorry. You know what? There were some complicating factors that sort of weighed in on whether it would be worthwhile to do. But we spent maybe too many meetings trying to decide whether we were going to go that way or not. But I don't think so.
All right. That was it. I don't want to end on a bad note here. So, Jeff, do you have anything you want to cover or mention that we didn't bring up in our 2 episodes?
I just think it's important to know the Suffolk County Water Authority, one of the largest suppliers in the nation. We're very proud of our record of testing for chemical compounds and removing them before you get to your tap. We have a new app that I want to mention. For many years, if people wanted to know their water quality, they could get it from a pressure zone. Some of these pressure zones extend from Oakdale all the way out to Southampton. Not quite, but it's almost that big. So you'd get water quality from a very large area. We created an app that would be you could type in your home address by going to our website and scwa.com/MyWaterQuality. You could type in your home address and pick up water quality from our nearest collection sample station, which may be down the road, just a couple of houses or a quarter mile from where you actually live. And it'll give you more accurate information, and it'll give you all the test results. They'll know what's in the water, what is removed from the water, and give you a sense of, hopefully a level of comfort that you're drinking some of the best water in the country.
I didn't know about that either. That will be checked out this afternoon for sure.
Thank you.
Man.
Appreciate
All right, Jeff, if nothing else, we'll wrap it up then. I appreciate your time as always. As I mentioned, this is Jeff's second appearance on the Environmental Echo. We're always happy to have him back, and hopefully we'll have him again in the future. But again, to our listeners, I am Paul Boyce, CEO and President of PWGC and the host of the Environmental Echo. Again, thanking our guest today, Jeff Szabo, CEO of the Suffolk County Water Authority. And again, if you guys would like to get a hold of us, as I mentioned earlier on, best way is through our website, www.pwgrosser.com/podcast. And I hope you've enjoyed part 2 of our 2-part episode with Jeff Szabo from the Suffolk County Water Authority. Thank you, everyone.